Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about something Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, said. The way the US goes bankrupt is through currency devaluation. Also, Hyundai Motor from South Korea bought a Xiaomi SU7, brought it back to Korea, and took it apart to study it. Foreign media are buzzing about why Xiaomi succeeded in making cars, while Apple failed. The US is fighting China. Apple spent $1 billion trying to make a car and failed. Xiaomi succeeded. Xiaomi's new car, the U7, received 200,000 orders within 3 minutes of release. This has made foreign media want to study why Apple failed and why Xiaomi was able to succeed. Bloomberg attributed it to a failure in strategy. Bloomberg said that Xiaomi's success in the automotive field not only earned its boss, Lei Jun, a great reputation, but also made Xiaomi one of the most valuable companies in China, shaking up both the tech and automotive industries. Apple's failed Titan car project only served to highlight the effectiveness of Xiaomi's pragmatic strategy. Xiaomi drew inspiration from the mature designs of Tesla and Porsche, while sticking to its philosophy of high-cost performance, making it a brand sought after by the next generation of consumers. According to Bloomberg, the reason Apple's car project, known internally as the Titan project, failed was largely because Apple didn't just want to make an electric car. Instead, it once tried to leapfrog the entire automotive industry's development stages and go straight for an L5 level, that is, a fully autonomous vehicle at the highest level. This goal was overly ambitious, and the project's direction kept changing, which ultimately led to more than a decade of effort yielding no results. In contrast, the 55-year-old Lei Jun has been relatively flexible with his time and resources. He has staked his personal reputation on this venture, declaring that building cars will be his last entrepreneurial endeavor. Due to the extremely high management expenses and labor costs in the automotive industry, along with cyclical purchasing trends and fierce competition, the car business is typically a low-margin industry, something Apple was least prepared to handle. Everything Apple does revolves around high-margin products. The hardware it sells typically has a profit margin of around 30 to 40%. Apple never gets involved in any low-margin business, because its high-margin ventures already bring in enough customers and revenue. This is probably why Apple's original Titan project put such an emphasis on autonomous driving technology. Autonomous driving technology would allow Apple's car to be sold more as a service rather than just a product, thereby generating the kind of cash flow that this tech giant values highly. Inside EVs also pointed out that Xiaomi and Huawei might be willing to sacrifice a bit of perfection in execution, just to be the first to bring their products to market. On top of that, there's a strong sense of national pride among Chinese consumers toward Huawei and Xiaomi, and both brands are willing to accept relatively low profit margins. So, it's not hard to understand why Xiaomi and Huawei's car projects can get off the ground, while Apple's cannot. After looking at my analysis, let's also take a look at some perspectives from China. The mainland site Chaiyan.com recently talked about two things related to Xiaomi that happened lately. The first thing is that Hyundai Motor from South Korea disassembled a Xiaomi SU7. On the 7th, a Xiaomi SU7 with a temporary Korean license plate was loaded onto a transport truck, driving along the Gyeongbu Expressway in Korea, heading straight for Hyundai Motor's headquarters in Seoul. According to reports from Korean media, Hyundai officially applied for a temporary driving permit for this Xiaomi SU7 for research and development purposes, making it an official research sample. At the same time, at Hyundai's core Namyeon R&D Center, more Xiaomi SU7s have already been brought into the facility for in-depth, dissection-style research. This is no longer just a traditional automotive giant's routine evaluation of a new product. It's more like a mature industrial system conducting an in-depth investigation when faced with a completely unfamiliar new rival with a different genetic makeup. Hyundai, and the entire traditional automotive industry, is now seriously examining the dramatic changes in the automotive market. According to Chaiyan.com, throughout the century-long history of the automotive industry, the chain of imitation and learning has been stable. Latecomers imitate the leaders, and peripheral markets learn from the central markets. Over the past few decades, China's automotive industry has essentially studied all the international giants, reverse engineering fuel engines, borrowing and imitating chassis designs, and even following closely in design. In the past, China was the student, while major companies like Hyundai, Toyota, and Volkswagen were naturally the teachers. Now, with Hyundai mobilizing significant resources to study the Xiaomi SU7, it marks the first, and most thorough, reversal of this learning chain. We need to clearly recognize that Xiaomi Auto has only been established for just over 3 years, and its first car, the SU7, has been officially delivered for less than a year. A newcomer in the automotive field with such little experience that it's almost negligible has actually become an object that one of the world's top 3 car groups must take seriously, invest heavily in, and thoroughly analyze. This kind of treatment is unprecedented in automotive history, and what it reflects is a profound sense of unequal respect. Hyundai studying Xiaomi is fundamentally different from when Xiaomi studied Porsche back in the day. When Xiaomi studied Porsche, it was a young upstart paying tribute to and learning from an industry benchmark. It was an act of striving upward. But when Hyundai studies Xiaomi Auto, it's a mature industrial giant examining a completely different kind of entity, only to realize that the other's growth path has already gone beyond what it previously understood. Is Hyundai really trying to learn how to build an electric car? Obviously not. Its eGMP platform is already world-class in terms of million-level architecture, charging efficiency, and electric powertrain performance, even surpassing competitors, including Tesla, in many respects. What Hyundai lacks isn't technology, nor platforms, and certainly not manufacturing capability. So what exactly is it studying about Xiaomi? According to Korean news reports, Hyundai is particularly interested in Xiaomi's smart cockpit and display layout, and this happens to be the core of the issue. What Hyundai truly fears isn't the car Xiaomi produced, but the innovative consumer electronics mindset it represents, a new paradigm where user ecosystems and software-defined capabilities are seamlessly integrated into the traditional hardware of automobiles. This is likely a DNA that Hyundai, no matter how hard it tries, will find difficult to replicate. Hyundai can invest $8.3 billion in research and development, and it can acquire the world's best suppliers, but it simply cannot transform itself overnight from a manufacturing company centered on mechanical engineering into a tech company focused on user experience and iterative software development. Such a transformation requires a complete overhaul of culture, organizational structure, and even core values. This challenge is far greater than developing a new platform, so when Hyundai puts its output on the dissecting table, what we see is not just circuit boards, screens, and code, but a huge question mark over its own business model and future direction. This car is like a mirror, reflecting the sluggishness and deep unease of traditional giants in the face of an era of transformation. The second event happened on July 18th, when Xiaomi founder Lei Jun met with BYD chairman Wang Quanfuk at the Xiaomi car factory. If Hyundai's research into output only reveals the solo combat capabilities of new players, then Lei Jun and Wang Quanfuk appearing together signals a future that will keep all traditional giants up at night. There is a possibility that a powerful alliance between the new and old forces could emerge within China's automotive industry. Of course, calling BYD the old guard is a bit of an understatement. It's only in the past couple of years that it has completely driven out Tesla, the so-called new force. So, what does Wang Quanfuk represent? It represents the world's largest new energy vehicle sales volume, unparalleled vertical integration, and a full industry chain covering batteries, motors, electronic controls, and semiconductors. BYD has solved core issues of cost, efficiency, and scale in car manufacturing. It is the ultimate industrialization in China's auto sector. So, what does Lei Jun represent? He represents top-tier brand marketing capabilities, a massive fan economy and user ecosystem, and a deep understanding of defining consumer electronics products and user experience. Xiaomi has solved all the core issues of traffic, branding, and ecosystem when it comes to positioning and selling cars. It is the ultimate embodiment of Chinese internet thinking, so I don't know if BYD and Xiaomi are actually working together. But the pace of change and the level of competitiveness in China's auto industry are probably not things that foreign companies can learn just by studying a couple of cars. Right now, the old superpower, the United States, is complacent and shows little progress in car manufacturing, while the government keeps resorting to financial tricks from over 50 years ago, trying to reap profits from the world. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, recently discussed his new book, How Countries Go Bankrupt and America's Debt Crisis, in an interview. Dalio said that, unlike companies or individuals, countries have two special powers: printing money and collecting taxes. Therefore, a country's bankruptcy doesn't necessarily mean defaulting on its debt. It can also happen through currency devaluation. However, he predicts that the United States will adopt the Japanese model, addressing its massive debt problem by printing money, devaluing the currency, and artificially suppressing interest rates. This means that future generations of Americans will repay debts borrowed in gold with dollars that have been devalued. He also mentioned that the current fiscal situation in the United States is shocking. The total debt of the United States is about $36 to $38 trillion. The annual deficit is around $2 trillion, and the annual debt issuance requirement, including new borrowing to pay off old debt, amounts to $12 trillion. 60% of government spending goes to social welfare programs, while interest payments account for 20% of revenue. Defense spending is close to $1 trillion. Altogether, these mandatory expenditures comprise 85% of the budget, 110% of government revenue, making deficits unavoidable. Dalio's solution: the U.S. reduce its budget deficit to 3% of GDP, cut government spending by 4%, increase tax revenue by 4%, and lower interest rates by 1%. However, he believes that the likelihood of this plan being implemented is only 5%, very, very low, because the political environment is too polarized to accept painful reforms. But in the interview, he said that through his conversations in Washington, he found that almost all U.S. congressmen agree with the solution he proposed, but no one dares to publicly support it because voters demand that they promise not to raise taxes or cut benefits. This kind of absolutist political environment makes it impossible to implement rational economic policies. It can be summed up like this: the automotive industry is the crown jewel of modern industry. Automobile manufacturing involves multiple sectors: steel, electronics, chemicals, and machinery, almost all manufacturing. Now it even includes the internet, AI, robotics, and more. Over the past 7 years, America's auto industry has been defeated by China. Now, it seems they can't even catch up. This is not a failure of industrial policy, but a decline in the spirit of innovation. Second, the U.S. borrows too much and innovates too little. With Trump in power, he'll continue dollar devaluation, essentially a disguised debt default. Historically, the U.S. operated under gold standard, dollar pegged to gold, setting 1 ounce at $35. But in 1971, the U.S. abandoned gold standard, began printing vast amounts of money. Now, gold's price is $3,350, meaning over 54 years, dollar depreciated 99% against gold. This is how the U.S. essentially defaulted on debts in disguise. The U.S. hasn't changed in over 50 years, it just uses finance to reap profits globally.